Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Before I dive into this story, I'd like you to take a moment, like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss more stories that will shake your heart and make you reflect on life. When Helena first knocked on my door, I almost didn't recognize her. She stood there in a dress too thin for the cold evening, her hair dyed, a color I'd never seen on her before, and a strange smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. 10 years had passed since she'd last lived under this roof, and though her face still carried the softness of my late wife, something sharp hid beneath her expression. My chest tightened, not just from surprise, but from an instinct I had long learned never to ignore. I let her in, of course. A father does not slam the door on his child, no matter the years or the silence that separates them. The house smelled faintly of pine polish and old leather, and I saw her eyes dart quickly to the framed photos lining the mantel. She stopped at the one of her mother, Claudia, her fingers twitching as though she wanted to touch it but stopped herself. I watched her, and the unease in my stomach deepened. "Dad," she said finally, turning toward me. "I thought maybe we could start over." Her voice cracked at the end, but it didn't sound like grief or humility. It sounded rehearsed, like a line she'd practiced in a mirror. I nodded, masking the way my pulse had begun to race. After decades in the army, after years of reading the smallest tells in a person's posture or tone, I knew something was amiss. Still, I played along. Dinner was quiet that first night. I heated leftover stew, and she ate quickly, eyes flitting toward her phone every few minutes. She smiled when I asked about her life, but the answers were thin waitressing, some traveling, no steady address. She didn't mention friends or work colleagues. When she excused herself to step outside for a call, I stood at the window, watching her pace in the driveway with quick, tense steps, her free hand gesturing sharply. I wanted to believe she had returned because she missed me, because she had finally grown tired of running and wanted to rebuild the bond her mother's death had fractured. But that night, as I lay awake, her laughter drifted down the hall, light but hollow, as though she were talking to someone who held power over her. The next morning, I brewed coffee and tried to shake off the unease. Helena wandered into the kitchen, her hair tousled, her smile suddenly bright and almost childlike. "Smells good," she said, kissing my cheek lightly. But there was a stiffness to her touch. As the days passed, my stomach began to churn at odd hours. At first, I blamed the cafeteria food from the VA hospital where I volunteered, but then it struck me that my appetite faltered only after meals we shared. The gnawing cramps hit after her soups, her stews, her insistence on making me tea. The thought was outrageous to my own daughter, yet the old instincts wouldn't quiet. I had survived deserts and ambushes, seen betrayal written on the curve of a man's lip. My body now screamed at me to listen. One evening, I sat reading in the living room when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The words were brief. "He won't last long. Be ready." I froze, staring at the screen. My first impulse was to call the police, but something in me wanted proof first, needed certainty before accusing my own blood. So I erased the message, slipped the phone into my pocket, and steadied my breathing. That night at dinner, I studied Helena more carefully. She avoided my eyes as she ladled soup into bowls, her fingers shaking just slightly. When she excused herself to fetch bread from the counter, I noticed the faint clink of glass against ceramic, the movement too practiced to be innocent. My heart pounded. My hands, though weathered by age, still moved quickly. While she turned her back, I switched the bowls. The moment she sat down again, I forced my face into calmness. She smiled as though nothing had happened, spooning the soup to her lips with that same practiced grace. I sipped from my own bowl slowly, tasting only broth, but every muscle in my body stayed tense, waiting for a sign. For the first time since her arrival, I realized I wasn't sharing a home with my daughter. I was sharing a home with danger. The clink of her spoon against the bowl sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet dining room. I watched Helena lift it, pausing as if savoring a memory that wasn't mine. My stomach twisted, a knot of both fear and resolve. I could see the glimmer of mischief, or was it malice, in her eyes, and I knew I had only one chance to act. The years I had spent learning to read danger in others weren't about to fail me. Now, even if it was my own daughter, when she got up to fetch the bread again, I didn't hesitate. My hands were steady as I carefully swapped the bowls, making sure not a trace of my suspicion showed. The one she had touched went to me. Mine, untouched, went to her. It was a quiet, precise movement, the kind that came naturally after decades of following orders and making split-second life or death decisions. My heart hammered, not from fear, but from a cold, focused clarity. This was no longer just about protecting myself, it was about revealing the truth. She returned, holding the basket of bread, smiling softly, a little too softly. Here, she said, placing it on the table. I thought you might like some. I nodded, offering her a polite smile that didn't reach my eyes. The air was tense, charged, as if we both sensed the unseen currents between us. She dipped her spoon into the swapped bowl, not knowing the consequences of her own action, and I took a deliberate sip from the bowl she had touched. Nothing happened immediately. Her eyes widened suddenly, the color draining from her face, her hand trembling violently. She dropped the spoon with a clatter, clutching her stomach. Dad, what's happening? She gasped, panic threading through her voice. I stayed seated, my face a mask of calm, letting the chaos unfold. I had known the shock would hit harder than the poison itself, and it did. Her body convulsed, her breathing shallow, and I watched, fighting the urge to reach out while knowing I couldn't intervene. Just yet, finally, when she collapsed onto the chair, gasping, I leaned forward. Helena, look at me, I said firmly, my voice carrying the weight of authority she hadn't felt since childhood. What were you trying to do? She tried to speak but could barely form words, sweat dripping down her temples, fear and guilt etched deeply into her features. I didn't want to kill you, she whispered, her voice cracking, barely audible. I just wanted you to be sick. I thought maybe it would hurry things up. The inheritance. I needed money, Dad. I didn't think it would be this bad. Her confession tumbled out in broken gasps, each word hitting me like a blow, yet confirming the instincts I had harbored since the day she arrived. The betrayal ran deeper than I could have imagined, fueled by greed and manipulation, and for the first time in a decade, the bond I had once cherished with my daughter felt irreparably severed. I let her catch her breath, watching her pale, frightened eyes. My anger surged, hot and bitter, but I knew this wasn't the moment to act on it blindly. Instead, I reached for the phone and dialed the lawyer I had consulted earlier, Emily, the one who had always guided me with both prudence and precision. Emily, I said steadily, I have a situation here. I need guidance. And fast. While explaining, my mind raced. Plans had to be adjusted, protections put in place, and the tangled web of deception had to be unraveled carefully. Emily's voice was calm but firm on the other end. First, get her medical attention. Second, do not confront her alone again. And finally, start documenting everything. She's crossed a line that could have led to your death. Her words were measured, but I felt the weight of the reality. Helena had betrayed me in a way I had only ever read about in case files, in news stories, never expecting my own child to become a threat. As soon as she stabilized, I confronted her again, this time in the living room. She was pale, weak, but defiant in a way that spoke volumes about her sense of entitlement and the influence of someone else. Why? I asked quietly, letting the single word carry the full force of a father's heartbreak and fury. She looked away, biting her lip, avoiding my gaze. It's Victor, she whispered finally, the name slipping out with a mix of fear and loyalty to someone outside our family. He told me it was the only way. He promised me I could have everything, my fists clenched, the rage and betrayal intertwining in a tight knot. I had known there were outside influences, something about her behavior and those secretive calls, but hearing the name made the scheme tangible, dangerous, and immediate. I called Marcus, a private investigator I trusted implicitly, someone I had worked with on smaller personal matters before but never on anything this serious. He moved quickly, following leads, capturing conversations, recording interactions between Helena and Victor. The tapes were shocking. Victor manipulating her, coaching her, convincing her that my death would solve everything. Their plot was meticulous, cruel, and entirely predatory. By the time Marcus delivered the evidence, I had already begun rewriting the terms of my will. Emily helped me redirect everything that would have gone to Helena toward veterans programs, ensuring that no part of my hard-earned legacy could be used to reward betrayal. The satisfaction wasn't in revenge, it was in justice, in ensuring that greed and manipulation could not claim victory in my home or my life.
When Helena returned with Victor, demanding I sign over my house, I was ready. I stayed calm, letting them underestimate my awareness, activating a silent alarm I had installed months prior. Within minutes, the authorities arrived, taking them both into custody. Helena's eyes widened in shock and horror as reality crashed down. The first time in years she truly understood that her father, hardened by life and betrayal, had seen through every lie. I watched from the doorway as they were led away, a mixture of relief and sorrow filling me. Relief that the danger had ended. Sorrow for the child I had once held, loved, and believed in, now lost to greed and manipulation. There was no gloating in that moment, only a deep, steady recognition that I had acted with both courage and precision, protecting not only myself but the life I had built from years of discipline, trust, and integrity. Even after Helena and Victor were taken away, the house felt strangely empty. The silence was not peaceful. It was heavy with the ghosts of years I had spent trusting blindly, of laughter that once filled the rooms, now replaced by echoes of betrayal. I wandered through the living room, touching the spines of books my late wife and I had collected, running my fingers over the frames that held happier times. It was hard to reconcile the warmth of memory with the cold reality of what had happened. Marcus continued his work even after the arrest, providing me with recordings of the full conversations, transcripts, and even messages between Helena and Victor that laid bare the depth of their manipulation. Each piece of evidence revealed something new: plots to falsify my accounts, secret transfers of money, plans to dispose of me in ways that chilled my blood. I read through everything carefully, knowing that if I missed even the smallest detail, there could be repercussions. But seeing the full picture allowed me to feel a strange clarity, a sense that for the first time in years, I was reclaiming control over a life that had teetered dangerously out of my grasp. Emily and I worked meticulously to ensure the legal system reflected the truth. Helena was sentenced to 6 years, Victor to 10. The courts recognized the premeditation, the manipulation, and the danger they had posed. I attended each hearing, standing silently as justice unfolded. There was no satisfaction in revenge, only in witnessing the system enforce boundaries, ensuring that actions have consequences and that deception and greed do not go unchecked. After the legal battles, I made the decision to sell the house. It was a place full of memories, both joyous and painful, but I could not remain tethered to the shadows it now carried. The sale allowed me to start anew, relocating to a retirement community in Florida. Here, surrounded by fellow veterans and people who shared a commitment to service and integrity, I found a renewed sense of purpose. Volunteering at the VA hospital gave me a chance to help others who had faced betrayal, loss, or danger, using my experience to guide, counsel, and support them through challenges that sometimes seemed insurmountable. Letters began arriving over time, some from veterans I assisted, expressing gratitude for guidance or simply companionship. One came from Helena. It was brief, contrite, filled with apologies and attempts at reconciliation. I read it slowly, recognizing both the longing for forgiveness and the naive belief that words alone could mend the damage done. I kept the letter for a while, then set it aside, choosing not to act on it. Some wounds, I realized, could never be fully healed, and some trust, once broken, could not be entirely rebuilt. Through it all, I discovered a new sense of family not bound by blood, but by loyalty, respect, and shared values. My days became filled with connections that mattered, friendships forged in honesty, bonds with veterans who had endured their own betrayals, moments of joy with people who understood what it meant to survive life's harshest trials. In these relationships, I found not only healing but also empowerment, a reminder that life continues, and even after betrayal, one can build something meaningful and enduring. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized that vigilance, courage, and integrity were my true legacy. I had faced betrayal head-on, protected myself, and turned a situation of potential destruction into a story of survival and justice. The pain lingered, but it no longer dictated my actions or my happiness. I could finally see the horizon beyond the past, where every day held new opportunities to live with purpose, kindness, and discernment. In the end, I understood that life is a series of tests of patience, judgment, and strength. Betrayal by someone you love is among the hardest, but it also teaches lessons that wealth or status cannot provide. It forces reflection, hones intuition, and, when met with courage, opens doors to unexpected growth. I embraced this new chapter fully, grateful for the clarity it had brought, and determined never to allow manipulation or greed to disrupt my life again. My journey wasn't just about stopping Helena and Victor, it was about reclaiming agency, protecting my integrity, and finding a sense of family and purpose that went beyond blood. Through service, community, and the wisdom earned from hardship, I built a life defined not by the betrayals I endured, but by the resilience, justice, and love I chose to cultivate every single day. Moral lesson. The story of Helena and Victor taught me that betrayal often comes from the most unexpected places, and that intuition is a tool honed through life experience, not to be ignored. When someone you love acts with deceit, anger and sorrow may surge, but acting with clarity and patience ensures justice without losing yourself. Life is a delicate balance between trust and vigilance, recognizing threats early, seeking guidance, and taking decisive, measured action can prevent disaster and reclaim peace. I learned that true family extends beyond blood. It is built on loyalty, respect, and shared values, not entitlement or manipulation. By redirecting my legacy toward veterans, I transform potential tragedy into a legacy of service, honor, and empowerment. Healing comes through purpose, helping others, and surrounding oneself with people whose integrity aligns with your own. Even when apologies arrive too late, it is possible to move forward, choosing relationships that nurture growth rather than pain. Life rewards those who act with wisdom, courage, and compassion, turning betrayal into a catalyst for personal strength and meaningful connections. Always remember, your resilience defines your future more than the actions of those who try to harm you. Hello guys! If this story moved you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, share with your friends, and